You know, when we talk about AI, everyone always jumps to like self-driving cars or sentient robots.
Right.
But I think the real revolution is happening at a much deeper level.
Yeah.
So today we're diving into the battle for the future of AI hardware.
Okay.
Specifically, Groq versus Nvidia.
It's a really interesting area to be looking at.
Yeah, and we've got some research here about Groq and their approach to AI hardware. So for those of you who don't know, Groq is taking on Nvidia, who are the current kind of kings of AI chips.
Yeah, they're the big name at the moment.
The tech world is definitely watching this.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not just like two companies going head to head.
Right.
It's like a fundamental difference in philosophy of how to build like the brains of AI.
Yeah, Nvidia with its GPUs has obviously been kind of the dominant force for a while now, especially with their CUDA platform.
Yeah.
But Groq is making a big entrance with, get this, LPUs, language processing units. And they're saying these chips are specifically designed for these massive language models that are coming out.
Yeah, and the performance claims they're pretty out there.
Okay.
We're talking up to 1 petaflop.
1 petaflop. That sounds impressive, but like I don't know what that means.
It's a lot.
For like, you know,
it's a lot.
The average person.
Yeah, it's basically a measure of how many operations a chip can perform every second.
Okay.
And 1 petaflop is 1 quadrillion operations per second. That's a 1 with 15 zeros after it.
Okay.
It's a ridiculous amount of computational power. So to try and make that relatable, imagine analyzing a data set the size of the entire Library of Congress.
Wow.
In the time it takes to make a cup of coffee.
So we're talking serious upgrade in speed here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so who are the brains behind this?
So the man behind Groq is Jonathan Ross. He's a former Google engineer.
Okay.
And not just any engineer. He was one of the lead guys working on Google's answer to the AI chip, which is the tensor processing unit, or the TPU. So he's got the background and the ambition to really shake things up.
So this is someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
He's not just some guy in his garage.
It's not some side project.
Okay, so we've got this industry veteran. He's trying to revolutionize how we do AI. But how? They have this word, deterministic architecture.
Yeah.
And
it sounds scary, but it's actually quite...
Yeah, it sounds a little intimidating, so break that down for us.
Yeah, so think about it like a perfectly synchronized factory assembly line, like how Henry Ford did with the Model T.
Okay.
That's deterministic. Everything's in the right place at the right time.
So no wasted movement. Everything's perfectly timed.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Groq has designed their LPUs with something called a tensor streaming processor, or TSP, and that's basically their assembly line for data. And the cool thing is that because of this, the compiler knows exactly what's happening at every step of the process, so you don't have any of the guesswork or coordination that slows down other architectures.
So instead of workers scrambling for parts, everything's laid out exactly where it needs to be. And it needs to be there. Streamlined, efficient.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Groq.
Yeah.
How does that compare to what Nvidia is doing with their GPU architecture?
So Nvidia's approach is a bit more flexible. They rely on something called high bandwidth memory, HBM.
Okay.
And this memory is actually on separate chips.
So to stick with your factory analogy, it's like having warehouses where all the parts are.
Yeah.
But they're not in the factory.
Yeah.
So you need this whole system to move stuff back and forth.
Exactly. And just like a real factory, moving things around takes time and energy.
And that's where Groq would say they have the advantage.
Yeah. They're saying we've got everything on the chip. It's much more efficient.
And NVIDIA is trying to address that with their Blackwell architecture.
Yeah, so Blackwell has faster HBM, more efficient pathways, but they're still limited by that fundamental need to move data between components.
So NVIDIA is saying, we're going to make it faster. And Groq is saying, well, you're still moving stuff around.
It's the faster horses argument. You can make a faster horse,
right?
But it's still a horse.
So they're saying it's not about making AI faster. It's about rethinking how we do it.
It's a fundamental shift.
Fundamentally different, okay?
Yeah.
It makes you think, are we going to look back and be like, remember when, like the horse and carriage, you know?
It's that kind of shift.
Okay, so Where do they see the biggest, I guess?
So when Groq talks about this, they highlight this graph
Okay.
from Nvidia's Blackwell announcement.
Okay.
And it shows that you can basically get a maximum of 50 tokens per second.
50 tokens.
For like interactivity with a large language model.
Okay, again, tokens.
So a token is basically a piece of text. It could be a word, part of a word, punctuation, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So 50 tokens a second is basically like 1 or 2 sentences per second of generated text.
Okay, I mean, that sounds kind of fast.
It does.
But if you're actually trying to like have a back and forth...
It's not fast enough for a real conversation.
Right.
That's what Groq is saying. For true AI interactivity, we're talking like instantaneous.
And that's where Groq sees the advantage with their architecture.
Exactly. They're saying our architecture, it's more efficient. It's designed for this back and forth.
Now, you mentioned that these chips, the LPUs, can be like 10 times more energy efficient.
At least.
Than the GPUs. That's a lot. Why is that?
So again, it goes back to the data movement thing.
Okay.
They're using this on-chip RAM memory. They've got the deterministic architecture,
right? Which
means data just flows. You don't have to move it around between all these different components. So you're not wasting energy just on moving data around.
So they're keeping it like local?
Like everything happens on the chip.
Everything's where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And that's a huge saving.
Yeah.
And this isn't just like...
It has huge implications.
Your electricity bill.
Think about the accessibility.
Yeah.
You could have AI in environments with limited power, like remote research stations, mobile devices, even spacecraft.
That's a good point. Places that don't have a ton of power.
This could be a game changer.
Okay, so this is potentially revolutionary. How would this change things in the real world? Like medicine or research or creative fields?
The possibilities are pretty huge. Take medicine, for example. Imagine AI diagnostic tools that can analyze your DNA, your medical history, in real time, right there in the doctor's office.
Wow.
That's personalized medicine.
That's the dream, right?
Yeah.
And you could actually do it.
Yeah. It's not just about, crunching numbers faster. It's about making AI accessible and responsive.
I think one of the things that they were talking about in, I think it was an article that I was reading, was that choosing between Nvidia and Groq.
Yeah.
Would be like choosing a whole new operating system.
It's a big decision.
Yeah.
It's not just swapping out a component. It's a whole different way of thinking about the problem.
Which is why a lot of developers are like, well, why fix what's not broken?
Yeah, the risk is there. But for some applications, that jump might be worth it.
Right. Like smartphones. Remember flip phones?
Yeah.
Nobody's going back to that. So it's
it's a gamble.
It's a gamble, but if it pays off.
And Groq is betting that speed, that responsiveness, that efficiency, it's going to be enough to convince developers to make that jump, at least for the right applications.
It's interesting to see this battle play out,
It really is.
Because you have this kind of classic...
David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Where the little guys coming in.
But like we were saying, sometimes the new approach is the thing that completely changes everything.
And Groq is putting a lot of faith in that, that's for sure.
Yeah, they are. But we've talked a lot about Groq.
Right.
We should probably talk about Nvidia a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, they're the biggest right now.
Yeah.
For a reason, so.
They've built this incredible ecosystem, right? From manufacturing to software tools. They've got this massive head start.
So in this battle for the future, what do they do?
Right.
Can they even take what Groq is doing and integrate it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge question, right? Because switching to a whole new architecture, that's not easy.
Right.
But Nvidia is known for innovation.
They are.
They're constantly pushing what their GPUs can do. I mean, look at Blackwell.
It seems like it's less about one of these companies winning and more about how this whole field is evolving because of this competition.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The competition is good for everyone because it forces both companies to keep pushing.
And that's good for the future of AI.
Absolutely. The more we have pushing the limits, the faster we're going to see advancements. Like in medicine, research,
And who knows where else? Robotics, climate modeling,
it could be anything.
The possibilities are huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up our deep dive into this whole world,
yeah,
I think the big takeaway is that we're at a very interesting point.
For sure.
In the evolution of AI hardware.
It's a really pivotal time.
It's really tempting to pick a winner, but I think the real story is just how fast this is all developing.
And the potential.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the early days of computers.
Right.
Where everyone was trying to figure out what worked.
Yeah, who's gonna be the big one?
Exactly.
And now look at it, it just exploded.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're on the verge of that again with AI.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening, just watch this space because it's going to be amazing to see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.